one session, presentations from our ordinary students. And I would like to introduce Pakhee Kumar, who is an architect, designer, and heritage management professional, currently working as a project manager with Treasure Caretaker Training for the Digital Monastery Project. And Pakhee has previously worked with the Advisory Committee on World Heritage Matters under the Ministry of Culture in India, where she was involved in the revision of the Tentative List of India, review of State of Conservation reports, and nomination dossiers. So, Pakhee, welcome.
Thank you, Kaliyoki. Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Pakhee Kumar. I'm from India. I graduated in MSc Sustainable Heritage in 2013, and today I'm here to talk about my experiences from MSc and also my professional works beyond. MSc Sustainable Heritage helped me build a really strong foundation in heritage management. The best thing about this course is that instead of knowledge being delivered, ideas are exchanged and debated. The program gave me a chance to explore my interests and also work on my weaknesses. The skills that I gained in my MSc helped me tremendously in my professional life, particularly critical analysis, the idea of questioning practices in heritage management. And this was particularly useful in every step of my professional life, and I will elaborate on this by talking about 3 points. First is the valuable properties in cultural heritage policy. Second is issues in World Heritage and Tentative List of India and revision of Tentative List of India. And third is the notion of visual integrity in World Heritage. Until 2014, I was working with the Advisory Committee on World Heritage Matters, which was formed by Ministry of Culture of India in 2011. I was involved in revision of Tentative List of India, wherein I reviewed about 200 applications for inclusion in the list. I also reviewed the state of conservation reports and World Heritage nomination dossiers of several countries to suggest India's position in 37th and 38th World Heritage sessions. I also prepared the background analysis document for visual integrity meeting, which was held in Agra in 2013. Presently, I'm working as project manager for Treasure Caretaker Training Digital Monastery Project, which is recognized as an innovative project in using technology for heritage protection. I'm also a member of aegis India, and I was involved in reviewing the National Conservation Policy of India, which was open for a review in 2013. I was really interested in reviewing this policy because I wanted to question a few practices, particularly the values around which heritage identification, conservation, and management revolves. Now let us look at that. These values being age and aesthetics. Now, let us start by looking at age as a value for identification in cultural heritage policies. In February 2013, I attended an international conference on protection of cultural heritage in Asia, which was held in Bhutan. An official from Bhutanese government had presented their country's movable property law, which stated the valued properties as the objects which are of artistic, historical, cultural, religious, social, archaeological, or technical value and interest, and are of at least 100 years old. Now, in an informal conversation with the culture officer, I asked the rationale behind this minimum age. And I was really surprised to find out that this is a borrowed concept from the policy of India, which also identifies heritage, which also identifies 100 years as the minimum age to be protected at the national level. Now, when this policy was open for a review in 2013, aegis India's reviewing committee had suggested that antiquity or age as a prime value or deciding factor need to be protected at national level needs to be critically analyzed in Indian context. However, this was not accepted, and we still have this in our national policy. Now, apparently, India is not the only country which has this minimum age value. It is in the UK and Scotland, it is 30 years. In Denmark, Holland, and Germany, USA and New South Wales in Australia, it's 50 years. I found out about this in a review discussion in which the professional had asked what is the minimum age for listing a building in her heritage register in the UK, USA, Australia, Asia, and Europe in general. Now, in the same discussion, professionals have highlighted that usually it takes time for the true significance of a place to be appreciated. I do agree, values do change with time and also the place. Now let us go back and look at this example. If you see the picture on the right, you can see vandalism done in Taj Mahal in 1856. And if you walk into Taj Mahal with few of Indian cultural officers, they might tell you that they want to protect this vandalism too. But something which is similar thing which has been done right now in Rome is vandalism which is worth of international attention. And okay. Now let us look at the Tentative List of India. The Tentative List of India has had properties before and after revision, which are less than 100 years in age. For instance, Chandigarh, Delhi, and Baha'i temple worship in Delhi. Now this generates a very interesting point. The properties which may have outstanding universal value may not be eligible for protection at the national level, although they are protected at the state level. So, is the criteria of minimum age a valid concept for identification of heritage? If yes, can we justify the minimum number of years in their own given context? Maybe some of you would like to answer this question later on. And let us look at the issues in World Heritage and Tentative List of India and revision of Tentative List of India. The graph here represents the World Heritage inscription in India since ratification of the convention. Now, if you look at this graph, the line in blue shows cultural properties, line in yellow shows cultural landscapes, and line in green shows natural properties. If you look carefully, before 2012, the last natural property which was inscribed was in 1988. That is, there was a gap of 23 years in between inscription of two natural properties in India, which is huge, given that World Heritage is actually a priority area for the Ministry of Culture of India. Also, until 2011, there were few unsuccessful attempts for inscription, and hence the Advisory Committee on World Heritage Matters was formed in 2012. Interestingly, this graph also shows changing nature of World Heritage Convention. If you see, in 1983, it was possible to inscribe four cultural properties in a year, but now it is not possible. Now, any state party can only submit two nomination dossiers per year for inscription. So, before the revision of Tentative List of India, there were several issues in the Tentative List of India. Firstly, there was no balance between the categories, as you can see from the pie chart. The proportion of cultural properties were much more than natural properties and cultural landscape. And moreover, there is no representation of mixed category sites. And some of the sites had the potential to be nominated as serial nominations or transboundary nominations. And there were issues in integrity, authenticity, protection, and management of new properties in the existing tentative list. There was a need to fill typological, chronological, and regional gaps as per the gap analysis done by ICOMOS and ACWHM at South Asia level. Lastly, some zones, particularly in the northeast, had less representation on the tentative list. As you can see from the graph here, it shows the graph here shows that northeast zone has the minimum number of representation in the tentative list. Now, to overcome these issues, 6 zonal workshops were held to invite proposals for the revised tentative list. A total of 200 properties and 34 thematic studies were proposed in these 6 zonal workshops. In these assessments, the assessments of these 200 properties were tabulated in a matrix for the ease of comparison and consistency, as you can see on the left. And the criteria of evaluation included key determinants, which was OUV of the property, integrity and authenticity, and also the preparedness, that is the boundary demarcation and the management, and the resources to actually carry out the nomination dossier. So in 2014, India submitted its revised tentative list. Now the tentative list has about 47 properties, and which is more balanced in terms of category, typology, and region. See, for instance, in this pie chart, it shows before the revision of Tentative List of India and after the revision of the Tentative List of India. And there is increase in percentage of natural, mixed, and cultural landscape. But with World Heritage tags, there are many responsibilities, which often results in conflicts between the state party and the World Heritage Committee. And one such reason for conflict is the notion of visual integrity. Between 2004 and 2012, a total of 66 World Heritage decisions refer to the term visual integrity, even though the term is not defined or mentioned in the operational guidelines. The closest approximation to visual integrity in the operational guidelines is in the definition of buffer zone, which mentions important views. Now, to resolve this issue and to review the text in the operational guidelines, an international experts meeting was held in Agra in 2013. Visual integrity may pertain to vistas, panoramas, viewpoints, silhouettes, as per UNESCO. It defines the aesthetic aspects represented by the area. And it can also be taken as the capacity of heritage to maintain visual distinctiveness or dominance in the landscape. Now, if you look at the Indian context, this is something which is very difficult for us to comprehend. We have heritage like Taj Mahal and Jaisalmer Fort, which stands out in the landscape, but we also have architecture which has narrow lanes and where the element of surprise is a part of the design. And you would go through narrow lanes and suddenly discover an icon. So in this case, visual integrity may not be applicable at all. Now, key statistics in World Heritage which refers to visual integrity. So these 66 decisions covers a total of 41 World Heritage properties, 25 of which were located in Europe and North America, 8 in Asia Pacific, 4 in Arab states, 2 in Africa, and 2 in Latin America. 22 of the properties had visual integrity issues within the property area, while 17 had visual integrity issues outside the buffer zone area, which is outside the legal mandate of the national government. And 2, due to lack of buffer zone. And amongst these, 5 properties were in danger due to visual integrity, 4 had more serious threat of going in danger. And in terms of category, these include 10 historic city centers, 12 monuments and single buildings, 12 sites and archaeological sites, and 7 cultural landscapes, mixed and natural sites. The prime reason behind the adherence to the notion of visual integrity were to meet expectations of visitors and to make environment free of inappropriate and incoherent development. Now, please note that inappropriate and incoherent development is not defined in the operational guidelines or anywhere in UNESCO. It could mean anything. It could mean a new building, a high-rise building, bridges, road, wind farms, or even the visitation facilities. It is not as simple as you can see in this picture here, wherein you can recognize incoherent and inappropriate development. In Nagore Fort, the arches were filled and to create habitable spaces. In this case, it is very easy to recognize that something is incoherent or inappropriate in the heritage environment. Now, let us look at some of the World Heritage decisions between 2004 and 2012. The World Heritage Committee had suggested to refrain from approving any land reclamation or construction to protect visual integrity and to maintain principal sightlines. It was concerned with the construction of high-rise buildings beyond the proposed buffer zone. And it was also concerned with potential impact of proposed wind turbines on the integrity and outstanding universal value of the property. To my surprise, they also mentioned that the visual integrity is impacted by current industrial agricultural development. It is common to find that the World Heritage Committee recommends to reduce the height and to reduce the height of the building to minimize the negative impact of the complex on its setting. And lastly, let us look at this Statement of Outstanding Universal Value, which was recently adopted. It says, the visual integrity of the property is well maintained towards the three hillsides, which seems to have been almost similar for the past 1,000 years. Is this what we expect from our heritage? To be as it is for thousands of years? India in its position paper had questioned that how do we ascertain the role of parallel and equally important issues such as ecology, carrying capacity and sustainable development in conjunction with assessment of visual integrity. Now, let us look at the recommendation of the meeting. It says visual qualities are prevalent not only in the integrity of a property but also in its authenticity, protection, management and criteria. Therefore, it is better to refer to visual impacts on the OUV of the property instead of using the term visual integrity. Now, although the term has been changed and the meaning of this visual integrity has been broadened in World Heritage concept, but the overall concept remains the same and the issues are also the same in the World Heritage. Now, this is a personal thought. I think there can be two distinctive thought processes when we're looking at visual qualities. One is maintaining the visual relationship and second is view management. Visual relationship can be historically important as it is clear from Taj Mahal. So, Shah Jahan, who was the emperor who built Taj Mahal, was kept in prison in the Red Fort, wherein he could view the Red Fort from where he was imprisoned. And therefore, this relationship between the Red Fort and the Taj Mahal is historically important. Whereas the idea of view management can be challenged, and particularly by those who have interest towards development and towards creating new icons. Like it was mentioned in 2005, that a city skyline is not its heritage. So, concluding my talk, I want to ask that do we need a wider perspective for heritage? This is one of my favorite definitions of heritage. Cultural heritage is a means of intergenerational exchange in any society when preserved, disseminated, and passed on to the next generation. However, in my opinion, the idea of intergenerational exchange is limited to what we have received from our ancestors, and we consider it our responsibility to pass it on to our next generation as it is. And therefore, the issues of age and aesthetics are prevalent in heritage management. And what I think of heritage is not only what we create, what we receive from our ancestors, but also what we create and pass on to our future generations. With this thought, I conclude my talk, and I want to thank the department for giving me the opportunity, and thanks to all of you for patiently listening. This is, in the end, this is my website and my email and Twitter if you want to get in touch later on, and now if you have any questions.
I think this is an indicative example student who really brings shift, change, and critical reflection. Thank you very much. So now we have time we have 10 minutes for questions. Any questions? Yes, there is one.
So, do you think that there should be a minimum age for heritage? Going back to your earlier slides. And if so, what?
In my opinion, no.
Why?
It is in the conclusion that I say that it is not only what we receive from our ancestors, it is also what we create. So if we consider heritage as that, then there cannot be a minimum age.
I was interested to see that 2 countries listed on your slide with no minimum age, Poland and Norway.
Yes.
Any further thoughts on why they have no minimum age and what difference it's making?
I am not sure about the rest of the countries, to be very honest. The idea of minimum age, when I mentioned all the other countries, I got this from a discussion which happened on LinkedIn, and I have not researched it on further. But in India, I can say that we do have the criteria of minimum age, and which is much more than rest of the countries. Rest of the countries have 30 years, 50 years. We have 100 years to be nationally protected. And if you look at our monuments list, well, most of them, I think all of them have fulfilled this criteria. But it is, having said that, it is not only that national list which is important in our country. Heritage in our country is beyond that, and those which are protected at state level are equally important, and they are also on our tentative list, which also says that they have outstanding universal value.
Any other questions?
We have one here. Thank you for your presentation. It's really interesting. I totally get what you're trying to say. However, not everyone, in my opinion, has good intentions with heritage sometimes. The problem is, if you open up some regulations, you open up to everyone, and sometimes that could create bigger damage. For example, from Chile, we have a UNESCO site in Chile, in the south of Chile, and even though it's protected, they have built this huge shopping center right in the buffer zone, and it's big, it creates a huge damage. And then you say, if you even protect it, like if you take down the regulations to protect it, even with the protection, they have managed to build this kind of thing. So imagine with no regulation or open up and trying to, and I understand what you're trying to say, and I totally agree with that. But the problem is how you can find a balance between, building heritage and, open up regulations.
I agree that there has to be a balance between what is designated and what is as a heritage and the new developments. But we also have to understand that the designated area or the idea of buffer zone in World Heritage particularly is existing because how do I explain this? Okay. The idea of buffer zone basically is to rationalize the protection. And if you think that whatever has the developments which is beyond the buffer zone is also impacting the OUV of the property, then you need to rethink on your own buffer zone. The national governments do not have legal mandates to intervene beyond the buffer zone. And that is why the creation of buffer zone is really important.
Do we have any questions? Any more questions? if you could also introduce yourselves, since this is an opportunity to network, that would be fantastic. Thanks.
I would like to know why did you choose to attend this course instead of a similar related to cultural heritage?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
Why did you decide to attend this course, the course regarding the cultural heritage,
Okay.
instead of a similar one? Why did you decide to attend this one instead of a different one?
This is a very interesting question, and I would love to answer that. When I was looking for my master's, I have some experience in heritage conservation in India, and I went through the course structure of many universities, and this one particularly interested me because, as Calliope said, the idea of heritage was not limited to buildings or to collections, but it was, the approach was looking at heritage holistically, and that is why I was interested in doing this course.
And if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great. I think it's great.
Historical analysis. Historical analysis. You have a slide there of the Tower of London, and it's 1,000 years old. In the last 15 years, it kind of lost its preferred position in terms of use management and visual relationships. It is now curtained by very tall buildings and morphed quickly. So now that that's the case, we're starting from a new pandemic. And how would you go forward with a dialogue of visual relationships and beauty when sort of the carts, the horses hold the barn? This is a significant decay.
Yes, I do agree with that. Well, for starters, I do not know the entire context of the Tower of London and its significance, to be very honest. Why I chose this slide was because I went through the view management which was proposed recently, and I could not find the rationale behind those panoramas and the sill house, which would said that it has to be protected. And if to be able to really answer that question, I'll have to look at the buffer zone which is there in the Tower of London, and how does it affect and all of that.
Do we have any more questions? Well, what I would like to take is a conclusion, which is it heritage only what we have inherited, or we are also creating heritage? And what are we going to do with so much heritage? And then it brings another issue of listing, and what is the benefit, what are the benefits of listing, who lists for whom and on behalf of whom. So that's really opening new ways of thinking, I think, and more questions than giving answers. But thank you very much for this. Thank you very much.